I think a big question out there for a lot of green card holders, permanent residents, is can the Trump administration really take away my green card? Can they just take away my permanent residence? Well, in this video, I'm going to actually try to clear the air and explain to you exactly how that whole thing works, and if it is possible that the Trump administration can just from one day to the next take away my green card status or my permanent resident status. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Andrea Shev, if you don't know me already, and I'm a U.S. immigration attorney, and I've been a U.S. immigration attorney for over 20 years now. And in this YouTube channel, I try to give you clear, concise, and easy to understand information about all different topics related to immigration. In this video, though, we are going to talk about the heated topic of can Trump or the Trump administration actually take away my permanent resident status? Can they take away my green card? Well, I'm going to go through, is that actually possible? Why would it be possible if it was? And what is the process? We're going to go through all of it so you know exactly the correct information and you can stop listening to all that noise out there that's probably making you a little bit crazy. All right, first things first in this video is, can the Trump administration take away your permanent resident status in the US, your green card? Well, the answer to that question is yes and no. It really depends on the situation. But I will tell you clearly that a normal permanent resident green card holder coming into the country or sitting inside the United States cannot just from one day to the next lose their permanent resident status. It's not possible. It's not possible. And first and foremost, it's not possible, which we will get into more in detail later, is because you have the right to due process. You have a right to be heard by an immigration judge the case, and the government who's trying to take away your residency has to prove by clear and convincing evidence that you have abandoned or let go of your residency or violated it in some way that they can actually take away your status. Now, there are clear reasons why you would be put in a situation either at the border or inside the United States where the government would have a right to pursue that process against you. For example, you've done a criminal act that is in violation of the US laws that would find you deportable from the United States. It would find you in a position that that type of crime would take away the rights as a permanent resident from you. What else? Major security issues, something that's extremely severe, that you violated certain laws of the US that would make you no longer able to be a permanent resident. Another one is you're outside the US too long. If you're outside the US more than a year, then you have abandoned your residency and you lose the right for your residency. You have to go to a consulate, which we'll talk about later, that process. That would be another reason. Or you're out long enough and you have no connections to the US, so that would raise suspicions that you have abandoned your residency. That could lead to a hearing that could cause you to possibly lose your permanent resident status. And the last one is a violation or immigration fraud. If you commit fraud against the US government in obtaining your resident status, that would be another reason why you would probably lose your resident status. You would lose your green card. All right, so those are the main reasons why you would be in jeopardy of having your green card or permanent residence taken away. But remember, those reasons need to be proven in front of a judge in the United States, and due process needs to be carried out. So you have a right to defend yourself, and the government has to provide clear and convincing evidence backing up one of those reasons that we already went through. Okay, it doesn't happen like overnight. When you approach the border, let's say, and you have one of these reasons to have not be able to come back into the US, except if you have been out for more than a year, which we'll talk about. But if you come to the border and they suspect that you've been out too long and you don't have sufficient documentation to support that you have not abandoned your residency, then they could start the process of due process, meaning that they could issue you something called a notice to appear or get that in motion so you will receive a notice to appear in deportation court. And then from there, you'll have the right to defend yourself, and the government will have a right to present evidence to support their claim that you are no longer a permanent resident or you should have your permanent residency taken away. It does not happen at the border. Everyone needs to hear that. It does not happen at the border. They do not rip the card from your hands and say you are now no longer a permanent resident. Now, I know you've heard many, many stories. I know you're scared. I know possibly you think that that can happen, but it can't legally happen. Now, there is something called a voluntary abandonment of your residency. It is Form 407, and you can sign away your right to being a permanent resident. You can say, I no longer want to be a permanent resident. And you can voluntarily sign this form. It has to be witnessed, and then you can now no longer be a permanent resident. A lot of people voluntarily do that without having anything having to do with what we're going to be talking about in this video, but it is something that you can actually pursue if you no longer want to be a permanent resident. Now, at the border, sometimes officers will say to the person in front of them when they feel that there's a clear abandonment or a clear violation, they'll say, do you want to voluntarily abandon your residency, and shove the paper or the Form 407 in front of you. And if you sign that form, you are going to now have affirmatively abandoned and saying, I don't want it anymore, my permanent residency. And then a hearing will not be set for you, and you will lose your green card right there. So it is very, very, very important to understand that if you're at the border and the officer asks you, do you want to voluntarily abandon your residency so we can be done with all this, and puts that form in front of you, you need to know to say no. I do not want to abandon my residency. I have not abandoned my residency. I am not in violation of being a permanent resident of the United States, and I am not going to sign anything. So you have a right not to sign that form if you are offered it at the border. Now, if you want to be like, I'm done with this, I don't want to be a permanent resident anymore, of course you could sign it, but you do not have to sign it. It is a voluntary is the key word, abandonment of permanent residency. You cannot be forced to sign that form. So you have to understand that. So if that is offered to you at the border, you have to know you do not have to pursue and go through the steps of signing and abandoning your residency. You have a right to due process. You have a right to go in front of an immigration judge, and you have a right to argue your case, and they have to, by clear and convincing evidence, convince the judge that you have abandoned or you have violated your permanent resident status, and it should be taken away from you. Okay, let's talk about if you're outside the United States for more than a year. If you're outside the United States for more than a year, a continuous year, then you will probably not be able to re-enter the country. They will say that you have abandoned it, and you've lost your right to a permanent residence, and you have to return back to your home country and file a document or file a form to try to reinstate your residency. Basically, a resident visa you must get to be able to re-enter the country. If you do that, you have to go to the consulate and deal with the U.S. consulate, and usually you're home abroad. And that form is not easy. That process is not easy, because you must prove that you are a permanent resident last time you left the U.S. You are a valid permanent resident. You did not have the intention to abandon your residency at any point since you left, and that you were stuck outside the United States under reasons that you couldn't control. There was reasons what kept you out of the United States for more than a year, with reasons that you could not control. So you have to have been a permanent resident when you left. You have to have not had the intention to abandon it when you left or any time while you were gone. And you were stuck outside longer than a year because it was for reasons you couldn't control. Now, if you can prove all those things, which is a big hurdle to prove, then you could probably get a resident visa to come back into the United States. If not, likely you're going to have to start all over and apply for permanent residency from the beginning. So you do not want to stay outside the United States for more than a year unless it is something out of your control and you had to do it for some reason and you feel that you can meet those requirements to get a resident visa to come back. Now, if you know you have to be outside the United States for more than a year, or you want to be outside the United States for more than a year, then you must apply for a re-entry permit before you leave the United States. Important, again, if you want to be outside the United States for more than a year, you must apply for a re-entry permit before you leave the country to leave for more than a year. You can get that reentry permit mailed to you outside the country. They can send it to a US consulate where you're going to be, but the actual application must be applied for in the United States when you're physically in the United States. You cannot apply for a reentry permit outside the United States. So you can't be outside the United States and say, oh, whoops, I'm going to be out for more than a year, and then apply for the reentry permit. You must do it inside the United States before you leave, and the biometrics must be taken inside the United States, and then you can leave and wait for it outside the US. But remember, the reentry permit is not valid until it's actually approved and you receive it, and it takes quite a few months to get that through. So if you're approaching a year and you have not received that reentry permit yet, I highly suggest you re-enter the United States because you do not have the protection of the reentry permit until it is actually approved and issued. Very important to know. I think the main thing that all of us need to take out of this video, and you have to clearly understand, is that the CBP, the Border Patrol, or internal ICE, Customs Enforcement inside the US, cannot take away your green card or permanent residence. Only a judge can take it away. They can question it. They can gather evidence to say that you have abandoned it or you have violated the status, but they cannot be the ones that take it away. An immigration judge is the only one that can make that determination that you have violated your status or abandoned it and you are no longer a permanent resident. I really hope all of this cleared a lot up and that you understand that when you approach the border or if you're in the United States, nobody can come to your door or stop you at the border and say, give me your green card, you're no longer a permanent resident. It's not possible. It's not legal and it will not happen. Nobody can take away your permanent residence like that. Only a judge can do that. The only time that you will not be let back into the country is if you sign that voluntary abandonment and you give it up yourself, which I told you do not have to do, or you've been out of the country for more than a year. Then you must go home and apply for a resident visa to come back. I hope this cleared a lot up. I hope it gave you the answers you need from an immigration attorney that's been doing this a really long time. I think I can give you the truth, and I think I can help ease your anxiety and your stress with regard to this topic. I look forward to seeing all of you in my next video. Please comment below, give me your comments, let me know what you're thinking. Share, like, subscribe, please, and look forward to seeing all of you in my next video.